Welcome back to another DCS Histories video with me, Evan, and today we are taking off from what you will recognise as Camp Bastion, but in fact I'm going to call it Camp Shorabak, which is the post-2014 camp that was owned and managed by the Afghans. And that date is fairly significant. Let me explain why. We are, by the way, playing my rare air-to-air engagement over Southwest Afghanistan mission. And so why is that date important? Why is the fact that this is Camp Shorabak important? Coalition are on their way home. That's what I've tried to simulate here with my relatively lazy static positioning of assets of school buses next to C-130s. Coalition is on their way home. A light footprint will remain, primarily to manage the logistics. I mean, you've got to remember, logistics is a massive military operation, right? So just to manage the withdrawal from Camp Bastion is a massive logistical effort. So we'll retain a footprint to manage that logistical mission, and also maintain a footprint to train Afghan forces. We aren't playing as the coalition today. We're playing as India. Now, all of you are going to be like, well, India don't fly F-16s, and indeed you don't. This is a Mirage 2000 mission, in fact, so those of you that fly the Mirage, you will be taking off in a Mirage. As it happens, I don't own that module, so I'm going to demonstrate the mission in my trusty F-16, because it's easiest for me to fly, he says. I get a lot of lag here, glitchiness on Camp Bastion, incidentally. I don't get it at Kandahar. I don't get it here. It's very interesting. I don't know if anyone else gets that. So we are playing as India, and you're thinking, why India? Well, this mission tells the story tells the clandestine story, the clandestine history behind Southwest Afghanistan. And the Western media will portray that conflict as a kind of Western coalition, you know, American, British forces, but Danes, Estonians as well. They'll portray the conflict here as a binary conflict between the Taliban and the coalition, right? That's how we understand this conflict. Today I'm going to show you that this conflict was not that simple and was not that binary. In a previous video, I've already talked you through some of the civil, or rather familial, grudges and fights that were going on down here. And on top of that now, I'm going to layer the international context on top of that and show you this was not a war or conflict between the coalition and the Taliban. This was a conflict that was between Iran, India and Pakistan, played out in the theatre of Southwest Afghanistan, played out through clandestine operations, intelligence operations. And that's what this mission is really all about. Now, we're going to end the mission in an air-to-air engagement with Pakistan. And of course, India and Pakistan are age-old rivals and enemies. There is no love lost between those two states. Now, Grim Reapers played this mission not too long ago, and their YouTube comments filled up with comments around, where are your online sources for this, right? Where are your online sources for this? To which I laugh for a few reasons. First of all, I would point to the numerous YouTube comments in that video from servicemen and women during this time period who remarked at how surprised they were at how many Indian security services that they were in the country at that time. They tell lots of stories about, I went to this base and I couldn't believe that I was seeing so many Indian security forces around. So first of all, I would point to that. Second of all, I would laugh at you and say, what online sources are you expecting exactly? This is the area of the world where You know, people ain't blogging online about what's going on out here, right? This is an area of the world that is mostly illiterate. We're going to fly to the Dishu Desert in a moment. There's no telecommunications out there. There's no, you know, fiber broadband. No one's using the internet. They'll be lucky if they have like a Nokia, you know, phone, an old-style Nokia phone. In fact, the only person blogging, I think, at this moment in time was me and a few other people, and I've since deleted that WordPress, sorry, page from all those years ago. So yeah, there's no libraries out here, right? No one's recording what goes on out here. This is really Wild West. As we're going to see in a minute. So we've just departed Camp Shurabak. As I say, Camp Shurabak is what Camp Bastion became. And the last reason why I laugh at those comments is, why is that so hard to believe? Why is it so hard to believe that after the coalition pulled out of Afghanistan, India would try and fill that void? Of course they would try and fill that void. Encircling their arch nemesis Pakistan militarily makes a lot of sense. And actually, post-2014, India starts sending over quite a lot of military hardware into the country, and they do so through their long-term military suppliers in Russia. Right? Let's not forget that India, for a long time, had been supplied with Russian military hardware, not least its air assets. And it's actually attack helicopters most of all that the government of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan were interested in. They were really interested in attack helicopters. So India starts pumping in lots of military hardware via Russia. Of course, it can't smuggle in military hardware via Pakistan. It can't do that, so it does it via Russia. And at the same time sends special forces experts, pilots, even police and intelligence agencies to train the Afghan forces, as I say, in this kind of strategic attempt to encircle Pakistan. But even before this, long before 2014, India had been hard at work trying to do this already. It didn't need the coalition to leave to start trying to encircle Pakistan once the Taliban were ousted after 9/11. In this area of Afghanistan, Indian companies start to buy up and start to become the primary contractors for much of the critical infrastructure. So think transport, think telecommunications. Telecommunications is actually a very good example. India, of course, is very good at its telecommunications. So a number of Indian companies come out here and they start taking over critical infrastructure in this part of Afghanistan, and that was a means of economically encircling Pakistan before they even militarily encircled Pakistan. Right? So now Afghanistan economically relies on its infrastructure from India, and this is, again, you shouldn't have to suspend disbelief for that. That strategically makes a lot of sense. Why wouldn't India do that? The other country doing it, incidentally, that isn't going to be represented here today in this mission, is Iran. Iran is very interested in controlling infrastructure and utilities in this area, not most of all water. So Iran has a big stake in the River Helmand because it feeds a lot of the irrigation in Iran. So of course it's going to intervene in much the same way. Of course India is going to intervene on the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. I also laugh because, you know, why would it be so hard to believe that intelligence agencies were working out here? Afghanistan, since the days of the British Empire, had been the middle ground for various military and intelligence agencies to exert influence and control. That has been going on for 200 years. So, of course it still happens. The Indian companies that came out here, as I say, they were state-sponsored. So the state gives them money to come out here and control this infrastructure. It's one of the reasons why Indian Tibetan security forces are out here. It's because the state has endorsed it. They willingly want companies to go and do this. And of course, a number of those companies were fronts for India's international intelligence agency, or the research and analysis wing. And again, it shouldn't be so hard to believe that the tradecraft of using private limited companies as fronts for your intelligence services is tradecraft that dates back to the very inception of the British intelligence services. And of course, where did India learn its tradecraft from? Well, of course, the British during the days of the Empire, as did Pakistan. So a number of these companies aren't just independent companies. They are not just endorsed by the state, but in many cases are the state. They are limbs, extensions of the state, of the Indian state. Pontiac, Miser radio check. Pontiac, Miser radio check. Pontiac, Miser, nothing heard. You're on your own out there, checking on the screen as soon as you can. All call signs, this is Miser, stand by for message. All call signs, Miser, Mike Romeo, November Romeo, Mike Quebec, November Quebec are active. Stay clear of Mike Romeo, November Romeo, Mike Quebec, November Quebec. Call sign Utsi, you are advised to turn left 005, maintain altitude to avoid, acknowledge.
Myself, Utsi, left 005.
So that was the area controller for Southwest Afghanistan, which at this point in time, because the logistics is still going on, is still a British or American area controller. He's been trying to raise me on guard because I'm doing something kind of naughty. I'm flying out to the Dishu Desert, and he's wondering, why are you flying out to the Dishu Desert? Because this is nothing. Look at this. There's nothing out here.
Post. This is Pontiac. Checking in on your frequency. Sorry to have taken so long. Advise on your instructions.
Pontiac, Postal. It is good to hear your voice. We are currently northbound on Route 606 with bandits in hot pursuit and are in need of your assistance. We count 4 or 5 gun trucks behind us, and they're closing on us steadily. Use weapons at your discretion, no restriction on your ROE. This is the Wild West out here. Nobody cares. All you need to do is buy enough time for us to break the contact and head north to Dishu. Do you acknowledge?
Acknowledged. Pontiac.
Okay, so we're out in the Dishu Desert. That was Indian security forces on the ground asking us to help. They've been maintaining Route 606, this highway. In fact, you can see the highway here. They've been maintaining Route 606. We'll come back to this in a moment. And they're under attack by Taliban forces, and they're quite literally on the run. Right? They're literally on the run. Hot pursuit is not a phrase that I've ever heard on the radio, but give me some artistic license to try and make this vaguely exciting. So they've been attacked on Route 606. This piece of critical infrastructure that they've been maintaining. Now, if you don't believe any of my stories up to now, this you can definitely find online. Indian security forces were indeed attacked on Route 606. Just see if I can find, there they are, that's the Indian convoy up ahead, on my nose. Indian and Tibetan security forces were attacked on Route 606. You can definitely research that online. There's the Taliban in, quote, hot pursuit. I am immortal today, by the way, just because it takes a lot of effort to record these videos, and it's very annoying if I get shot out of the sky when I'm half an hour into a video. So yeah, if you don't believe any of my clandestine storytelling, this is something you definitely can research. So, Indian and Tibetan security forces are attacked en route 606 like this, whilst Indian contractors control the road. Now you're going to wonder why, in a million years, would India state sponsor a highway in the middle of the desert? Because let's be clear, let's look around. There is no civilization out here. This is just a desert. There's nothing out here. No resources, nothing. Why on earth would India even go to the trouble? Well, this is part of their encircling strategy. This highway runs through Iran, it doesn't run through Pakistan. And of course, the more, Afghanistan's a landlocked country, so the more that it relies, the less it relies on Pakistan, the weaker Pakistan's economic position. So again, you shouldn't have to suspend disbelief that, yes, India would go and send companies out here to maintain this highway because it weakens their rival. But this then begs the question, why on earth would the Taliban be out here, right? Why? Look, there's nothing out here. Look around, there's just absolutely sweet FA. Nothing out here at all. So why on earth the Taliban even be out here to begin with? And this is where the clandestine operations start to play in. Because if Afghanistan was being used, or if rather the government of Afghanistan was being used as an extension of India, the Taliban were being used as an extension of Pakistan's inter-services intelligence agency, ISI. And the Taliban is a child of the ISI. This is definitely not a secret. I would encourage anyone to go to a library. You can look this up. There are plenty of fantastic books on it. Good authors include Sayyid Akhani, Anatol Lieber. They're all great historians looking at this. We just locate these convoys for a second. There they are. The Taliban are a child of the ISI. They are trained, funded, equipped by the ISI. They were in the 90s and they continue to be today. They are, for all intents and purposes, an extra limb to Pakistan's state apparatus. And the reason why the Taliban were out here attacking Indian security forces, again, do I need an online source for this? No. The reason they're out here is at the behest of Pakistan to interrupt and disrupt the construction and maintenance of this highway so that Pakistan can continue to force an Afghan economic reliance on them. So, when we think of the Afghan conflict, it isn't so much a conflict between the Taliban and the Americans and Britain and so on. In fact, this is a conflict between warring factions in the country. Find this. Is that on there? I think it is. Oh wow, that's a good hit. Between warring factions in the country to begin with, and Layered then on top of this are political interplays between Pakistan, India, and as I say, Iran aren't represented in this mission, but make no mistake about it, they're at play out here as well. And so, you know, for British servicemen and women and American servicemen and women,
Pontiac, postal. There's a roadblock up ahead. Stand by for further information. Approximate location, 41 Romeo, November Romeo, 05-172-155. I say again, 41 Romeo, November Romeo, 05-172-155. At least 2 vehicles spotted. Advise you ingress and egress east to west to avoid friendly fire. Use weapons at your discretion. Report inbound.
so I hilariously didn't have a pen and paper to hand.
Pontiac.
I hilariously didn't have a pen and paper to hand. When she gave me that grid reference, so I'm going to have to eyeball this one. Can't actually remember what I was saying. Anyway, yeah, so, sorry. American, British service, men and women, there's a roadblock. Yeah, we think we're going, myself included, you know, as a sort of middling in tow at the time, we think we're going into this sort of two-dimensional conflict, and it's so far from two-dimensional. It is the opposite of two-dimensional. It is messy, horrible.
Altitude. Pull up. Pull up.
Well, it was a terrible mess. Not my best work. Let's do that again. I'm going to go for a pair this time. Yeah, it's a incredibly sort of messy conflict that really, in the end, you know, the British involvement is small in terms of what goes on here. The bigger players, as I say, are the neighbouring states, and I can guarantee that they're still heavily involved. We'll talk about that later on. Let me just finish this off. This is a better run. That might have been a bit early. No, that's pretty good. Got one more.
This is Visor on guard, this is Visor on guard. Unknown pair, currently 40 miles east of Midland. You are in Visor's airspace, approaching military danger area, advise you turn south immediately. I say again, this is Visor on guard. Unknown pair, currently east of Midland by 40 miles. You are in Visor's airspace and approaching a military danger area. Advise you turn south immediately.
Pull up. Pull up. Altitude. Altitude.
Pontiac, postal. I don't like those calls on guard from Mike. That's almost definitely Pak Air looking to disrupt us. Request that you perform a visual intercept and make your presence known. Do not engage unless a hostile act is committed or is about to be committed. I say again, do not engage unless a hostile act is committed or is about to be committed. We're not here to start a war. Do you acknowledge?
Wilco. Turning south to perform visual intercept. ROE is do not engage unless a hostile act is committed. Pontiac.
Bingo.
Okay, we are bingo fuel, which is about as useful as a chocolate teapot. I wasn't keeping an eye on my fuel there. Should probably turn on unlimited fuel for the purposes of the video. Anyway,
Don't see Visor. I'm looking at a potential merge here between two unknowns alongside Pontiac. Are you able to vector south and see what's going on?
Aye, sir. Uzi, negative. We haven't got the fuel for it. Advise you leave them to it. What happens in Dishu stays in Dishu.
So let's just recap what's just happened here. The area controller for Southwest Afghanistan noticed two unknown aircraft entering his airspace from the south, and he basically said, "Hey, look, identify yourselves. You're moving into a military danger area. You can't fly here." They're clearly not answering. Meanwhile, my colleague on the ground, she told me, she said, "Well, this isn't good. They're coming from the south, right? That's likely to be Pakistan Air, looking to disrupt us." And she asked me to do, quote, "a visual intercept. Do not engage in this." I'm engaged, or if they're engaged. If they shoot at us, then you can shoot back. Other than that, though, we're not here to start a war, is what she said. So and then the area controller did go out to another pilot out here to see if you could break us up. The other pilot was like, nope, not going to get involved. I'm just going to go home, keep my head down. You guys, let Pakistan and India do whatever it is they need to do. Now again, all the naysayers are going to be thinking, well, first of all, sorry, this intercept is going to be very short-lived because I have absolutely no fuel to be doing this. Let's dump these tanks now. Okay. I've got no fuel for this, so this is going to be an interesting intercept. I'm actually going to find them on radar first of all. I don't think that's them. There are. That'll be them. Okay, 22,000. As I say, I've not really got the fuel for this. So this is going to be interesting. So, yeah, a lot of the naysayers are going to be like, "What? This is nonsense. Why would Pakistan fly Afghanistan to disrupt Indian operations in support of the Taliban? Surely." Well, I don't know if there's any online resources for this, but there's definitely literature on it. I suggest you go to a library, but actually Pakistan regularly infringe on Afghanistan's airspace, sometimes in support of the Taliban. I'll switch to Fox 2s here in case we end up in a firefight. We're seeing two aircraft. They haven't done anything to let me know they're hostile, so I'm not going to do anything either. In fact, I'm going to fly slightly away from them. She said, "Make my presence known," so that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to make my presence known. Oh, that is a missile in there, but that is a hostile act. And that's me being immortal there. Totally lost visual on the other. Been lazy with my air-to-air here. So that is a JF-17. So as early as the 1990s, Pakistan was known to infringe on Afghan airspace in order to support the Taliban. In fact, there's quite a major operation in 1994. Let's go and kill that. No idea where the other one's gone. In 1994, where they sent quite considerable close air support, mostly in the form of rotary, aircraft, it should be noted, into Helmand province in support of the Taliban. I think the other one lost visual with me as well. I think we lost visual with each other. I'm just going to go back and towards the convoy because that is what I'm supposed to be protecting. Haven't really got the fuel, I'm going to fall out of the sky, but it is what it is. Purposes of the video, that's fine. So yeah, keep an eye on your fuel in this mission because you're low level for a lot of it. In fact, no, I was going to say, I literally was about to say I'm going to try and get back to base. That's not going to happen. I'm going to burn as much fuel as I can. No, sorry, I thought that was my fuel warning. I might be able to get back to base here, come on. We can do this. What have we got? I need to fly for 70 miles. Let's see what we can do here. I might be able to make it back. Okay. Let's just get rid of these last remaining. Oh no, I've jettisoned everything, haven't I? I forgot. Yeah, there was an example of how terrible I am at DCS. Considerable CAS assets, like I say, supporting the Taliban in the 1990s, and we've got to view the Taliban, as I say, as the child of the Pakistan military and the Pakistan intelligence services. The interplay between them, it's so intimate that you can't. In many cases, you can't even call them separate entities, right? They are very much part and parcel of each other. In fact, when you interview local people in Helmand province, they will tell you openly that they call them Punjabis. Another example of how many people down here, they don't recognise borders, they recognise families and tribes and castes, right? They don't recognise state borders in the way we recognise state borders. That's okay, it's just a cloud. They will tell you that they come across many quote Punjabis in the area that are ISI, recruiting on behalf of the Taliban or planning operations. There is this oral narrative. Again, I've got to stress that everyone down here is illiterate. That no one's blogging, no one's creating YouTube videos, no one's even writing stuff down. You've also got to remember that anyone who probably was educated enough to write something down, typically the men, right, because girls weren't allowed to school, are dead through years of conflict. It's one of the great sadnesses of, I guess my fuel, it's one of the great sadnesses of this conflict is that the histories exist only in the women, right, because the men have all died, and meanwhile the women aren't allowed to school and therefore can't ever record these histories. So there's this oral narrative that persists in Helmand province that the ISI was responsible for some of the Taliban operations against the British and some of the kind of, I'm going to say, civil rights abuses, for want of a better description, that was going on at this time as well. No one can verify one way or another if that's true, but you've got to question why the oral narrative persists if no smoke without fire, right? There's got to be some truth to it. There's a lot of mythology in Southwest Afghanistan. It's hard to know what's true and what isn't. What it tends to reveal, though, is truth. So, is it true that there were ISI operatives on the ground in Helmand province delivering operations against British coalition forces? I don't know, possibly not. But what it reveals is the truth. And the truth is that the ISI were involved with the Taliban, right? So that's that's the key with Afghan mythology from this time period. These oral histories and these oral narratives don't necessarily tell the truth, but they do. They tell you the overarching truth of the matter. So yeah, the local Helmandis will tell you that there were Punjabis on the ground, ISI on the ground, particularly during the 2006 period, which is what we last told in our previous mission, which was a bloody year for the British. So yeah, I'm sure I don't have a YouTube following, so no one's going to be commenting on the video, but you know, for all of the kind of naysayers out there around, oh, this sounds like nonsense, I can assure you it's not nonsense. It doesn't even sound like nonsense, right? Of course this stuff is very real. You are dealing with intelligence services as well, that, as I say, let's remember that for Pakistan, in fact Iran to some degree, and India, they learned their tradecraft from the British. And who else was good at mobilising militias in other countries and exercising political will and colonial expansion without invading? The Brits, of course. We were really good at it, right? That's what we did. That's what T. Lawrence of Arabia did. That was our modus operandi. We wouldn't have to send in entire battalions to control and exert influence. We would influence different militias. We would create alliances on the ground, lever grievances between militias. That's what we did during the days of the Empire. That's where India and Pakistan learned their tradecraft. And that is exactly what's at play in this area of Afghanistan. It's exactly the same thing, just in a different time, in a different theatre. Now, I don't know. Interestingly as well, again, for those people who maybe don't believe these stories, the one thing you can look up is when the US pulled out of Afghanistan in 2021, was it? The Kabul airlift? The slightly unspoken airlift, it is reported, so you can Google it. The slightly underreported airlift, though, is the Indian airlift, which incidentally is a massive military operation in its own right. They had to fly, I think, via Russia, if I remember correctly, because they couldn't overfly Pakistan. And they had to send a C-17, right? A C-17, the inside of a C-17 is vast. It is, like, endless. They sent a C-17 down to Kandahar, South Afghanistan. Such was the Indian presence in this part of the world. And they airlifted, significant amounts of people and equipment out of Afghanistan. Again, you kind of have to question why they need to do that if they weren't quite such heavy players in this area. It's hard to know now. I've been an analyst now for a long time, so I can't really speak with any kind of authority on the matter. It's hard to really know how the geopolitical politics have changed since 2021. The obvious thing to say would be that India will have lost its influence, right? Hence it airlifted all of its people out. The Taliban are in power. Taliban is, as I say, an extension really of Pakistan. Common sense says that India's lost its influence now. The only thing I would say to that is, don't underestimate the savviness of these intelligence agencies. Say they learn from their colonial predecessors. Make what you will of the British Empire. I'm not going to pass comment on it, but what you probably can say is the British exercised tradecraft, a modus operandi, like I say, that did this very well. Don't underestimate how good India will be at that. They will be, just like Pakistan, will be trying to figure out local grievances, figure out which militias they can pay off, which militias they can bring on board. Iran will be doing the same thing. In fact, much of the civil war in Helmand that the British got involved in was really an Iran-Pakistan war. Pakistan was supporting a group called Hizb-i-Islami. That was kind of their extension. of exerting influence in Afghanistan. Meanwhile, Iran were funding Harakat. I have miraculously made it back to Camp Sharabak. I'm going to go for an emergency landing of sorts. I had no idea that I was going to be able to make this back. I think this is... Yeah, I had no idea this was going to be the case. Bringing my flaps down. I'm going to make this a hurried landing, because we just don't have the fuel to screw around. So yeah, don't underestimate her, is all I would say. As I say, this mission is playable in the Mirage, which is an Indian aircraft. So do enjoy if you're a Mirage owner. It's intended as a bit of fun, right? Clearly we don't use the phrases like hot pursuits. That is not a thing. So it's intended as a bit of fun, those ground runs, and of course a bit of fun with the air-to-air. Pakistan and India were not lobbing missiles at one another. Intercepts may indeed have happened, but clearly no one wanted to start a war. I am happy that I've got back to Camp Sharabak. That was an unexpected surprise. When I went bingo, I did not... It was a heavy landing, but it will do. I did not expect to get home. Fairly certain I took out... Oh my gosh, check that out. What a remarkable recovery. I mean, can't make this stuff up, can you? Totally unintentional there. They're going to have to... I've lost my nose wheel steering, right, because I've lost my my electrics. So I am rudder steering. And all I'm going to do is get to the end of this runway, using my brakes to steer now, so I'm dabbing my right brake to try and get a little bit of a right turn on. So I think in one of my last videos I said I'm not a pilot. That wasn't entirely true. I didn't start life as a pilot. I wasn't very good at it. There was a reason I became an INTO. I mean, doesn't get better than that. One jet brought home safely. Just. Right guys, Evan checking out. I hope you found that history interesting. Go and look it up some more. As I say, Hussein Akhani, I'd probably point you in his direction first of all. Probably has the best writing on these kind of clandestine operations. That would always be my... If someone was new to their analyst role, I'd always give them that book and say, hey, look, read this before you do anything. But if nothing else, hope you enjoy it.